I'm like, you're going to jail. I'm like, no, this is not okay. You need to get out of my house right now.
Bizarre break-in, what a family says a half-naked man took from them, and they're warning for others today.
Also moving forward, the next steps in a lawsuit filed by the family of a woman killed in a crash involving a former officer.
And final day of the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. Reaction to Ted Cruz's speech after he didn't formally endorse Donald Trump, and what happens tonight.
Good morning, I'm Fernanda Lopez.
I'm Adam Atchison. It's good to have you along this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to have you here. We're beginning day 4 of the Republican National Convention. This morning, Donald Trump just a few hours away from accepting his party's nomination for president.
Yeah, it's an event many thought impossible a year ago, and tonight millions will watch as his campaign reaches a new milestone.
KRQE national correspondent Mark Meredith is live inside Quicken Loans Arena this morning. Mark, how are things looking for the big event this morning?
Adam, Fernanda, good morning to you guys. The stage is set. Security is at a heightened level, of course, but the balloons are also ready for the big drop tonight after what you guys were just talking about. Donald Trump will officially accept his party's nomination for President of the United States. This campaign has gone through a lot, more than a year now since it has launched, and it's all led to this moment. So let's talk about what we're going to see. Donald Trump will be speaking sometime during the 10 o'clock hour, and he's going to be introduced, we believe, by his daughter, Ivanka Trump. She's going to try to highlight all of her father's characteristics, both his business leadership and how she believes he'd be able to bring the same principles to the White House and what that would mean for the country, not to mention the world. We also have been having a chance to speak with some delegates from New Mexico and all 50 states, asking them what they want to hear from the man who will be the Republican standard bearer for not just the next 4 months, but potentially, if he wins, the next 4 years.
I want him to reinforce his platform that he's already laid out for American people, and I think he will do that.
A little less on the incendiary remarks and a little bit more substance. We really have not heard a lot of policy from Donald Trump, so I'd like to hear more of his policy.
I think Donald Trump needs to keep on being Donald Trump. That's why he made it this far, and I think that's what he's going to keep on doing.
You could see in that last clip there were some creative outfits that were there, and it's going to be one of those signs of how much excitement is going to be in this arena when Trump takes the stage. There will be a lot of loud applause. I want to know one particular thing. There's a giant teleprompter directly across from the stage. Will he stick on message, or will Trump do what he does at these rallies? We've seen it time and time again, and go off script. Millions of people watching, a lot on the line. Fernanda and Adam, we're going to have a lot to talk about tomorrow morning, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's been a lot to talk about already. And Mark, we heard from Texas Senator Ted Cruz last night. He took the podium in primetime. I'm curious what the reaction is this morning to him not formally endorsing Donald Trump during that speech. I know there was some public outcry on that one.
The reaction, I would say, is yeah, the reaction has been pretty mixed, I would say, because, of course, Ted Cruz was expected to come out here and try to heal what has been one of the most contentious primary debates we've ever seen. Instead, Cruz making it clear last night that he was going to say congratulations to Donald Trump, but he wasn't going to endorse him. In fact, he was telling voters all across the country to vote their conscience. Immediately, the crowd, I was right here, immediately the crowd got very upset, very angry, and it was a sign just how much healing is still left to happen between now and November. Guys?
All right, Mark, I know you'll be there for tonight's speech, too. We'll be live there at the RNC tomorrow and at the Democratic National Convention coming up next week. If you'd like to stay up to date on the 2016 campaign coverage, just go to the website, krqe.com this morning.
All right, moving on to more warm temperatures today. Kristen Curry is here with the latest in our forecast.
Good morning, guys. My producers get nervous, too, when I go off script. They're like, oh no, what is she going to say?
Stay on target.
Yeah, the good news is, there's no teleprompter for weather, so I get to say whatever I want. So let's get started. Hey, Cloudcroft, you look great this morning. You actually had a pretty good rain in your area yesterday with one of those storms passing over the Sacramentos. Albuquerque, we're quiet. There's nothing out there on radar. Temperatures this morning in the 50s and 60s up to the north. We've got 70s down to the south, 58 in Las Vegas, 75 Tucumcari. Not too bad out there out across the eastern plains, but day planner shows 80s by the lunch hour, and then later today we will top out near 96 degrees. Our temperatures are only going up into the weekend, so that's something we're going to have to be dealing with, the heat returning to the state. Fewer storms on tap, and we can blame the high pressure for that. It's sliding overhead. It'll park itself on top of New Mexico over the next couple of days before moisture returns here next week. Even over the weekend, we'll get a cold front to help us out and keep those rain chances alive, but we're nowhere near done with the rain just yet, which is good news for us here in the in the land of enchantment. I will break down everything you need to know. Who will be lucky to see the storms today? And we'll take a look at those numbers coming up here in just about 15 minutes.
All right, thanks, Kristen. This morning, Espanola Valley's basketball coach is preparing to return back to the court and to the classroom. This after school board members decided to reinstate the coach despite verbal abuse allegations. News 13's Sarah Yingling has the details.
Fernanda, in this agreement, Coach Richard Martinez will be back at the beginning of the school year, but not before immediately serving a 5-day suspension without pay. Coach Martinez has also agreed to complete sensitivity training. The decision came down last night at the Espanola Valley Board meeting, where it was briefly announced that an agreement had been reached.
The last thing I have to say is if there was an agreement made between the administration and the coach.
People at the meeting were expecting a bigger announcement from the board and the superintendent, but didn't get it. This after the firing of Coach Martinez just months ago became a hot topic issue when allegations surfaced that Martinez was verbally abusing his players. Coach Martinez was also under fire for a video that showed him leading the team in prayer before the championship game. School Board President Pablo Lujan says the community has been torn apart by this incident. He called the settlement fair and for the school to move forward.
Due process was taking place at some point with the employee. I think the accusers, the accusee should have his day in court. The accuser should have their say.
And it isn't over yet for Coach Martinez. He faces a separate investigation from a New Mexico Public Education Department. This could mean losing his license to teach and coach. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Sarah. The PED tells us they would like to have its investigation complete before students return to school, but did not give us an exact date of when they think it would be wrapped up.
Attorneys for the family of a woman killed in a crash involving a former APD sergeant are now preparing to tell a jury that they believe the city lost video evidence through incompetence. A federal judge ruled the city was negligent when it failed to preserve video evidence in that crash. In 2013, former Albuquerque Police Sergeant Adam Casals ran a red light, killing 21-year-old Ashley Browder. He spent 90 days in jail for careless driving. A civil lawsuit filed by the Browder family expressed concerns about what happened to video from that night. Browder's attorney asked a federal judge for sanctions against the city for destroying traffic camera video they believe shows Casals was lying. Casals argued that he had a green light and he was chasing a drunk driver. The city says they ordered the evidence to be preserved, but an error caused it to be destroyed. A federal judge called out the city for not having proper procedures to save evidence and ruled the city was negligent for losing that footage. Browder's attorneys will now be allowed to tell a jury that the city lost the video through incompetence. Also, the city will have to pay attorney's fees to cover the cost for filing the motion.
New at 6, video showing the response to the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting from the perspective of first responders. This lapel video from Orange County Sheriff's deputies shows stretchers laid on the street outside Pulse as deputies prepare to help victims. The deputies are heard planning how they'll carry people out.
Hey, everybody slow down. One person, push the stretcher. 2 people to grab people, put on the stretcher.
As people run out of the club, we can see deputies pulling them aside and checking to make sure they are now not the shooter. Minutes later, they search through the building and are told by dispatchers the shooter is in one room with trapped victims.
Time now 6:08. New police video also shows the moment an officer shot and killed a man during a standoff at his northeast Albuquerque home.
Light him up.
That is Officer John O'Gean asking for some light to be flashed before firing at 58-year-old Dennis Humphrey back in May. Officers say that Humphrey was making threats against police and turned the lights off inside his garage. Police say when they shined a light inside, they saw Humphrey pointing a gun right at them. APD says it was responding to a call that Humphrey was drunk when things got out of control. Humphrey died. The officers were placed on administrative leave.
A Kansas family is still in disbelief this morning after finding a half-naked stranger eating and drinking in their home. Renee Flores and her 2 kids had just gotten home when they saw this man sitting half-naked in their living room. Renee says he took some of his daughter's Vicodin pills and was drinking a half-empty bottle of vodka. On top of that, the man had raided her fridge and made himself a sandwich. The family says they immediately called police, who arrested him down the street. They're now warning other families to double check their windows and doors before leaving the house. Something you'd never imagine seeing, though, when you walk in.
Yeah, pretty frightening for them.
Every time I close my eyes, it's just like I'm just seeing flashbacks.
A therapist hid after an officer opened fire. What he says that same officer told him after the shooting, coming up.
Also, parents take the podium speaking out on APS's new transgender policy, what the board plans to do next.
Plus, Clinton's campaign turns its attention to the land of enchantment today. Who's visiting Santa Fe on her behalf? That's next. Good morning and welcome to KRQE News 13 this morning. I'm Fernanda Lopez.
And I'm Adam Atchison. Good to have you along Thursday, July 21st today. Day's top stories right around the corner now. First, the forecast. Kristen Curry is here with a look ahead at the day. I hope for good things in the forecast today.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the overall setup, we're not going to see quite as many storms as what we had over the past few days, but we still have some rain to look forward to in certain portions of the state. So let's break this down. Right now, 72 degrees, winds light here in the metro, only hitting us at about 6 miles per hour out of the northwest. Humidity, a bit less than what we had yesterday, so you'll probably notice the difference as you're walking out the door. Yesterday, we were looking at humidity values of about 75%. Right now down to 48, but temperatures across the state feels pretty nice out there in Roswell at 72, 75 in Tucumcari. We've got a cool spot up in Alamosa at 48. Some of us a little cooler than yesterday, but we're going to make up for it this afternoon. Back to the mid to even upper 90s we go across the valley. 96 is what I'm expecting downtown here in Albuquerque, but isolated storm, a possibility. That being said, we do have fewer storms in today's forecast compared to yesterday afternoon. So not everybody will see storms, but some of us may need the umbrella as we transition towards the later part of today and into the evening hours. I'll break down who has the best shot at rain and what's ahead for the weekend coming up here in just about 15 minutes.
All right, thanks, Kristen. We're taking a live look this morning at the Q Center in Cleveland right now as day 4 of the Republican National Convention gets underway.
A lot of people already milling about there, and the theme of the night tonight is Make America One Again. Donald Trump is expected to formally accept his party's presidential nomination. Meanwhile, Trump's former rival Ted Cruz, his speech yesterday remains a hot topic of discussion this morning. The Texas senator was enthusiastically booed during his speech for failing to formally endorse the billionaire.
Stand and speak and vote your conscience. Vote for candidates up and down the ticket who you trust to defend our freedom and to be faithful to the Constitution.
Trump brushed off the non-endorsement as no big deal via Twitter.
Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's campaign is staying busy. They've released a new video ahead of Trump's remarks tonight. It highlights all of the, quote, nice things he had to say about her before the bitter campaign. In New Mexico today, former Texas Senator Wendy Davis is expected in Santa Fe to campaign for Clinton. Davis rose to prominence after a 13-hour-long filibuster to block more restrictions on abortion rules in 2013. Davis will be at Cafe Castro's for a roundtable starting at 2:30. She'll then head to the Democratic headquarters on Cerritos Road for a phone back at 4.
Also happening in just hours, the Bernalillo County Planning Commission is scheduled to meet for a 4th special hearing on the proposed Santolina development on Albuquerque's west side. The nearly 14,000-acre community would be built between Atrisco Heritage High School, MDC, and along Central and I-40. According to the county's Planning Commission agenda, revisions have been made that are included in a revised plan. In a meeting last month, officials said they were still waiting for the developer, though, to come up with a plan that satisfies the needs of the community, along with how to pay for it all. Today's meeting is scheduled to start at 9 a.m. We'll report what happens on air and on the KRQE News app.
After the state auditor found an APS board member altered receipts to get money from the state, questions remain unanswered this morning after that board member didn't show up at yesterday's school board meeting. The state auditor says Eleni Maestas doctored a personal cleaning receipt for her home address to get reimbursed with school funds from the charter school she runs. While the district attorney looks into the possibility of criminal charges, the school board president says the board is limited in what it can do.
The most that we would do is a censure, and that would be just simply saying, we have concerns.
Removing Maestas from the board is up to voters. We've learned it would take a petition with 151 signatures from people in her district. Then, if a court agrees there's enough proof Maestas stole school money, voters can decide on her removal in a special election. Maestas was voted onto the school board in February of 2015 for a 4-year term. A school district spokesperson says Maestas didn't show up to yesterday's school board meeting because of a death in the family. A district divided. Some APS parents are still upset over the district's new transgender policies. Others are praising the initiative.
And both sides turned out to the school board meeting last night to discuss the directive. It allows students to use a restroom or a locker room based on the gender that they identify with, not necessarily the one that they were born with. While some defended the new rule, others turned out to the meeting last night to tell board members they didn't like it or they had an issue with the way it was put in place. Because it's a directive and not a change, school board members did not vote on the decision. Instead, it was the superintendent's decision. Training on the change is already underway, and meanwhile, school board members say they're still working to clear up confusion.
And we are going to bring back information on the transgender. I said we would, and that's part of what we're doing. And there will be some meetings and there will be some community discussions.
And school board members say they're also going to meet with each other to discuss what they call the process.
Southwest Airlines is warning flyers there will be longer than usual wait lines this morning as they work to restore their computer system. Southwest teams have been working throughout the night on a computer glitch. It forced cancellations and delays on hundreds of flights yesterday for 3 hours. Travelers couldn't check in for flights online or buy tickets at the airport. People had to be checked in manually. Southwest says it could take a couple of days for things to get back to normal.
Time now 6:36. A Miami police officer who shot an unarmed therapist is off patrol this morning. Police say they showed up after getting a call about a man with a gun. Charles Kinsey is a behavioral therapist who works with that man at a group home. He says he was holding a toy car. New cell phone video shows the tense moments before Kinsey says an officer fired on him out of nowhere.
When he hit me, I'm like, I still got my hands in the air. I say, no, I just got shot. And I'm standing there, I'm like, sir, why did you shoot me? And his words to me, he said, I don't know.
Charles says afterward, officers put 3 sets of handcuffs on him as he bled. Police have not said why the officer shot Kinsey. The Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office is assisting in that investigation now.
A pilot is recovering this morning after he was hurt trying to stop a runaway plane. In this surveillance video, you can see the plane doing donuts on the tarmac. Kind of a crazy sight. According to the airport manager, the engine started up with too much power and it overpowered the brakes, sending the plane spinning. The pilot was hurt when he tried grabbing onto a wing. Luckily, he was not seriously hurt and is expected to be okay.
Wow, that's how it stopped, by running into the building.
Wow, very scary.
Incredible.